After 8 long years, Ben Affleck is back as the accountant. And after I saw that first very underrated action movie, I said, I need another one because that movie was awesome and everyone should have gone and seen it. Well, it definitely built a big following because we finally have The Accountant 2 after way too long, and it's a lot of fun. Everybody, welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today we're discussing The Accountant 2. This is about Treasury agent Marybeth. When someone close to her is killed by an unknown assassin, Medina is forced to contact Christian Wolff to solve the murder. With the help of his estranged but highly lethal brother Brax, Chris applies his brilliant mind and less than legal methods to piece together this unsolved puzzle. But as they get closer to the truth, the trio draws the attention of some of the most ruthless killers alive, all intent on putting a stop to their search. Now, this features a lot of the returning cast from the previous film, as well as directed by Gavin O'Connor, who I think is very underrated as a director. Definitely go check out his filmography. I think more people should talk about Gavin O'Connor. And as I mentioned in my intro, the first Accountant film, I have a little bit of nostalgia for, even though it's not that old, mostly because when I started reviewing movies, that was one of the first films I saw coming back to this to take it a little bit more serious. And in terms of that, I've always said that, like, when something comes down to me, what's a really underrated movie that no one really talks about? I always said, go watch The Accountant. That's a really fun and cool action film that, again, has this really playful and unique undertone to specifically Ben Affleck's character in here, but also overall to the entire tone of the film and what they set up. And I've always wanted a sequel to this. They've talked about a sequel for years, and I genuinely am shocked that we actually have it now. After hearing some early buzz and specifically talking to some people who had seen the film, I got a little bit worried for the movie overall. A lot of them said it was a little bit more playful, a little bit more tonally different, but still a lot of fun. And for me, I knew I'd probably have fun with the movie, but was that tone change going to really make this film still work for me? Because I overall loved what they did with the first Accountant. And I have to say, part of me actually prefers The Accountant 2. I think The Accountant 1 is more self-serious. It is more serious to a certain degree, but I think that is because of where these characters were in their life at that point. And primarily, I think that film does a really good job at building up Christian Wolff's character, the accountant, and really much managing him and letting him go through something that shifts and changes his. And again, this film picks up 8 years later. A lot can change for characters. And I think for me, where Christian Wolff now is in his life, and specifically even Braxton, where he's at in his life, is at a certain point that it makes for the tonal shift to make sense. And where if the first film was more of a conspiracy action thriller, this is a full-on buddy action comedy with a serious conspiracy tone to it as well that adds to and takes away from the levity, but never like deviates too much to the point where it felt tonally awkward to go away from. And I think for me, that is very streamlined and very carefully walked because of Gavin O'Connor's direction. And I'm very excited to talk about The Accountant 2 today. So make sure to hit that like, subscribe button, comment down below your guys' thoughts. Do you like the first one? Do you not? Are you excited for the second one? I got to see it because it's tax day. They did early screenings for that, but they're not doing press screenings. That's fine. I don't care. I'm happy I went and saw the film. But of course, we're talking about the film, and I want to mention my pros. And the number one thing I can say is just Ben Affleck and Jon Bernthal. I genuinely think this film thrives and lives off the back of these two's chemistry. Their chemistry is top tier. You completely and utterly believe that they are brothers. And I genuinely love the way and the dynamic between both of them. Their chemistry is firing on all cylinders in every sort of way, whether you actually have a brother, whether you have a sibling in your life, or maybe you just have a best friend that really much feels like your brother or sister. You're going to completely buy into their relationship because it's just some of the playful jokes and the playful mannerisms they have between each other, because no matter how old you are, you still play around in those fields. And while I don't have a brother, I have a sister, some of the things and some of the banter between them two, I could definitely feel. Vice versa, same thing to some of my friends who I do include, even though they're not blood related, they are my brothers. There is that banter between us and them, and I, again, saw that between Ben and Jon so well in here. There's a lot of different moments in here that I'm going to be quoting to my wife once she finally gets to see the film, because they are hilarious. But not just hilarious, they feel real. they feel seamless, they feel organic, they don't feel that they're just playing for a bit. And that's one of the things that I think makes the tonal shift for this film actually work. It's because Affleck is not as alone in this movie. Just as Anna Kendrick was very alone in kind of their bond and everything in that first film, this film showcases that both of them have been alone for so long that them being together may be the best part of their world. And that in reality, they may need each other more than they actually realize. And while the film doesn't go into any more serious dramatical moments to that, what it really does so well is that organic chemistry makes you just want to thrive and enjoy the time with them. And that for me was one of the best parts about this movie. Again, in some ways, I almost think that is the reason to see this movie. And it might be the reason that this film actually works is because of their chemistry. We'll talk a little bit more about that in my issues and my mixed aspects, but I genuinely cannot express enough how much I love their chemistry in here. Easily some of my favorite that I've seen so far in 2025, and partially even from 2024. And also on top of this, Affleck is great in the role. He's so good as Wolff. Jon is amazing as Braxton. I think he basically steals the show here. And also Cynthia Addai-Robinson, I think does a great job as Marybeth Medina. Very much so. And I think the rest of the cast is pretty solid for what they get. But those three alone are the reason that this film works. Gavin O'Connor is the director as well. As I mentioned, is very underrated. Look up his filmography. He's great here. And I think he's able to, again, stylize and shoot off this film in a really fun way. But when the action gets serious, it gets serious. And that's one of the things is that you come to The Accountant really much for a fun, puzzling conspiracy theory and conspiracy story that I think overall has its fun twists and turns just like the first film. I don't think is satisfying, or maybe not even satisfying is the correct word, because I was still satisfied in this film, but maybe not as intriguing, maybe a little bit something you've seen before. But when you do get to some of the twists and turns in here, you're like, oh, that's cool. I like that. And I also like how it adds to the overall nature of what The Accountant is. Very much different demographics in the world that it very much touches on. And again, a lot of that goes from Wolff, a lot of that goes through other characters that we've met, but specifically this conspiracy really doubles down and adds to, I don't even want to say the lore, but I guess it is technically the lore of this world, which again makes me go, I'll watch 5 more of these movies, please. Let's not wait 8 years. Let's get an Accountant 3 going. For me, the story, while not as strong as the first one, was still fun. And I think Gavin O'Connor does a great job walking that line, building that intrigue, building that mystery, and at the same time, filming the action greatly. Now, from what I can remember, because it's been about a year since I watched The Accountant, I think The Accountant had a little bit more action than this one. It absolutely makes up for the action by the last 30 minutes. The last 30 minutes is just so awesome that the action is highly stylized. It's a badass. You can see everything going on, and it is very visceral, intense, and I was on the edge of my seat having a blast with it. And there's some other action scenes throughout the entire movie, and I think all of them are fairly done. But that last third act, I think, really just pays off, and it builds up to a great weight for that. So I had fun with the action. I had fun with the brotherly chemistry. Very much organically flowed into that. And I think the overall film has a lot of fun moments to that, where it may meander, but I still had fun. And I think when you go to a film like this, you just want to have a good time. But that's where I kind of want to dive into my mixed and cons, because I think there will be people who are disappointed in this film. I think there will be people who don't think it's awesome like I do, or that my audience thought it was. And to be honest, I'll kind of get it, because some people really like the tone of that first one, and the tonal shift may not work for everybody. But I think the thing that may not work for everybody is how the story does meander. This is a brother comedy in the same sense. It's two brothers kind of reconnecting in their own light. There's a part where they go to a bar. And why? To reconnect and to have fun. And was it needed? No. You could have completely gotten rid of the scene. It wouldn't have changed a single thing in the movie. And usually things like that would annoy me, especially because the runtime's about 2 hours and 12 minutes. And I think one of my biggest issues with the film is it is too long. I would say it's about 10 to 15 minutes too long. And a scene like that maybe taken out would have streamlined the entire process. But I think it would have gotten rid of the brotherly relationship and the rebuilding of that. And for me, in some departments, I think there's an argument to be made that that was needed. So for me, in that same regard, as much as it meandered, it didn't bother me, but I can see it bothering others. And genuinely, I think the only big issue I had with the film was the pacing of the movie. I think the pacing of the film is the one thing I can go as far to say, yeah, I checked my time quite a few times, and I was like, let's start moving this along. Honestly, I found that The Accountant 2 was a wildly entertaining sequel that brings a lighter, more playful tone to the franchise, and I thought it totally worked. The action hits hard, the humor lands perfectly, and it thrives on the brotherly chemistry between Ben Affleck and Jon Bernthal. In some ways, I find that this film works because of them. And I don't know if their chemistry, if it wasn't in this film or it didn't work as well, I don't know if I would be coming out of this film as positive as I was. I had a blast for this film. I almost did not go tonight to see this film. I was very exhausted, but my wife talked me into it. She said, go see it. You'll probably like it at the very least. And she was right. So with all that said, I'm going to give The Accountant 2 a B+. Mean it. I'm ready for a third film. Please get going on that. Thank you so much again for watching this. And of course, until next time, stay classy.